Welcome to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic dating in Denver. My name is Dave Glazer, your host and facilitator, where each week we bring expert guests to come share their knowledge, tools, and tips so that we can show up as our most authentic self. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast. I'm Dave Glazer in Denver with my special guest today, Sarah Rabenou. How are you today?
Hey, I'm well, thank you. Hey, everybody.
Good, you're hailing from New York.
Yes, everything's green and the flowers are coming out. It's just today happens to be a rainy day, but it's all good. Yeah.
Well, good. We chatted last week. We got to know each other a little bit, and I wanted to introduce you to our audience. Why and how is it that you got into this creative therapy work?
Oh, so for creative arts therapy, how I got into that was because when I was a child, I grew up in a household where having my own voice was not okay. And so one of the ways that I dealt with that instinctually was through my creative outlets, through expressing myself through art, mostly. And as a child, I was also kind of theatrical and musical, and I loved dance and stuff, but I was a little bit more shy around those things, like displaying them for everyone, but art was something that I could keep internal and still express something that I was feeling or going through. And so when I found out that art therapy was a career, I was like, awesome, this is exactly what I want to be doing because it just makes total sense. And I always had an affinity for helping people. So that's how I got into that. Mm-hmm.
And that's the day job, am I correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then you also have a passion above and beyond that, that kind of stems from your own personal life.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about what you do for a passion project.
So my passion is coaching and teaching women, mostly women. I do work with men too, but my true heart goes out to women who, as in my journey, lived in a way, not because they didn't, not because they weren't doing their best or because they were bad or wrong or anything like that, but due to how they were raised, the things that they believed, and this is what happened to me, that they kind of lose themselves in a sense, lose who they are, maybe don't even understand who they are, and end up seeking that outside of themselves. And in my case, through relationships and through love, which I think is a very common pattern in our society. We look to love to fill us up, and it doesn't work. And so for me, it was about learning who I really am through the process of going through these relationships, and then going through the actual like suffering and pain of and devastation of those chain of events and the breakdown of my family. And it happened to me more than once. It happened to me twice. And then I was like, what the hell is wrong with it? You know, like you go through all these, like, you know, when something is a pattern and it keeps showing up and showing up, you have to look at it. And through my process of healing those things and learning who I was, and I learned what worked. And so it's my passion to share that and teach that and really support other women in stepping into life in just a more beautiful, authentic, loving way.
I can completely relate to that because I believe that's how we ended up here on the podcast after almost a year of seeking answers for the patterns that were coming up in my world. I find a lot of people out there see those same patterns occurring in their relationships, and then they finally start to get real with themselves.
Right. Like for me, it took, I mean, I've always been a seeker, but for me, it took like these really intense, like deep core wounding types of experiences to like shift my whole paradigm and to like really do something totally different. And it ended up being the most beautiful blessing of my life. You know, these things that crack us open end up being the things that grow us into, you know, who we really are, and to live authentically and in love, which is, you know, I think what we all just want. Yeah.
The only way out is through.
Yes. Yes. And then there's methods along the way that make it easier, that if you learn them and you know about them, then it can make it easier and you can avoid it. Sometimes I find people aren't motivated enough until something crashes, because then it's always hard to admit that you're having trouble with something. I think that's a normal thing. So definitely I see that. I see that. But there's always these little pains along the way that if you learn the tools can definitely help and make it easier. Yeah.
There's no better motivator than rock bottom, that's for sure.
That is true. Yeah.
And what methods and tools would you recommend for us to use along the way if we keep running into these same patterns?
So for me, there's kind of like 4 or 5 aspects of things that I find that, like, if you implement them all, maybe not all at the same time, but if it's kind of like a dance, depending on where you're at. But for me, the components of that are related to learning how to work with your own emotions and understanding how you can use them to help you through, and also how they're kind of like your best friends if you learn to work with them, and stop resisting the harder ones. So learning how to handle the harder ones. And then another one is dealing with some of the healing work that may need to happen based off of blocks. And a lot of times we get blocked based off of our experiences and meanings that we've given things that have happened in our lives, and they start to run our lives and we don't realize it. So kind of tackling those. For me, one of the huge things that's really important, I believe for a woman, but I think for everyone, and we touched on it before about having fun, right? Like being in your pleasure and joy, and like really making that a priority in your own life, learning what turns you on, not just sexually, but really in life. Like, what are you passionate about? What are you, just what makes you light up? Do you like to go outside? Do you like to travel? Do you like to go to the music? Whatever it is, do you like to make art? Do you like, and also trying new things and opening yourself up to expand to more, so that you're keeping the energy in your life moving. But I think that's really important, both for yourself and in relationship. If you want to have a sustained, healthy, relationship with 2 individuals who are enjoying each other and enhancing each other's lives, like really being in your passion, and your pleasure is a beautiful thing. And it turns the other person on. It keeps them interested in you and exciting, because you're creating excitement from within based off of going for what you love and what makes you happy. So that piece is really important, I think. Also, for me, one of the biggest things that I still have to work on every day, being in a society where we're trained to put other people first, to please others first in order to be liked, to be accepted, is to have your own back. And that means, like, no matter what you're going through, like making it right, like telling the story that is right, and really taking care of yourself in that way, and giving yourself permission to just be you, over and over and over and over again. To me, that was like a game changer when I started to give that gift to myself, to really have my own back. And sometimes I have to reinforce it because I slip back into old patterns, because it's challenging, based off of all the pressures and pulls of expectations and things around us. But when you are committed to that and you put that primary, your whole life will change, for the better, and things just fall into place. So that's a huge, huge piece of what I help teach women. And always returning home. Like, when you have a question, returning home to yourself. We all have the knowledge that we need for anything. Our hearts know, and we just have to turn them back on and keep listening and talking to that part of ourselves over and over and over again also. And also there's other ways of connecting to those parts through expression. That's part of what in the art therapy stuff that I do, through expressing yourself, you tap into those pieces and you learn about what that is for you. And then the last huge thing that I think is part of the approach that I take is mindset, and really like mindset mastery, not just like telling a new story but truly like kind of being Nazi-ish with yourself about about like how are you thinking about things on a day-to-day basis, and what are you creating based on that, and how, like, what are you allowing yourself to think and then feel, because it's always a choice, but often we feel like the emotions running the show or the circumstances are running the show, and it's like training yourself over and over and over again. And that's, I think, like I keep saying, you have to train yourself, and that's why coaching is so effective and helpful. It's not that anyone can't figure this stuff out on their own. It's that you have like a cheerleader, someone to remind you, because when we're left to our own devices, we kind of, we just get off track sometimes. And it's just like when you have someone there to help hold you accountable, to help to know where you're at on your path and support you through those things and hold you, to where you are, and also to who's been through these things also, who can kind of see what's going on and break you open and know what the next best step would be based off of where you're at. That's really helpful. And so that's basically what I feel that I do. Yeah.
That's a lot of mini concepts that are built together to be one big concept.
Yes.
And I want to ask you specifically about what I'm hearing you say is this mind-body connection.
Yeah.
Tuning in by returning home to ourselves to seek answers. Mm-hmm. But also specifically, how are emotions like that best friends that help you work through those issues that keep arising?
Yeah, so specifically with emotions, I think it's really common, like we feel something bad and then we do something to avoid, or like we either self-medicate, or we become workaholics, or we smoke cigarettes, or we watch television to distract ourselves. But if the feeling is there's a reason. We don't feel things for no reason. And the more that we avoid it, it keeps stuff blocked up. It keeps energy blocked up, and it keeps you from having flow for really having what you actually want. And so I'm also a believer that we create our own realities. And so when we're feeling negative emotion, what I teach is that there's something inside of you that's out of alignment with what you want, with what's be true to you. So anytime you have a negative emotion, if you tune into what it is and talk to it and give it a voice, allow it to tell you what it wants to say, and even if it sounds crazy or irrational, like it'll have something to say if you give it that voice. And then being able to really from your mind say, okay, like this is what I'm feeling. How do I want to take care of this? And often these emotional things that we're getting triggered by are coming from old parts of us, old injuries that when you, as your adult loving self, kind of move in and take care of it and give whatever's causing that what it needs, give you yourself what you need. You reparent yourself, you love on yourself, and you give whatever it is that it's saying, that attention, then it doesn't feel the need to hold on anymore. It lets go. And sometimes when you let yourself feel it fully, because you haven't done that, because emotions tend to be like waves. So if you just are stopping it every time there and there and there, it never gets to peak and release. So sometimes it's just about that. And sometimes if we've had trauma, we carry it in our physical bodies. And then there's processes to actually release physical trauma through breath work and shaking work and other types of work like that. But I think it also depends on where someone is at vibrationally, where someone's at within themselves, with which method of those types of things will be right for you, and sometimes you can bypass all of that and just get really strict with like, okay, negative emotion, out of alignment, what do I want to feel instead? and focus on that. And like, you can bypass all that, but sometimes we're not there vibrationally and you need to go through the process. So it really depends on where everybody's at in that. But yes, like that's how I tend to approach emotion.
Sure. And
Yeah.
when you attribute the word negative emotion, are you talking about anger and sadness and the like, or are you just saying in perspective that it's not in alignment with what you want?
Correct. Like I wouldn't even, I mean, I'm using the word negative because that's what most people relate to because it doesn't feel good. So like an unwanted emotion, you know, but it's not good or bad. It just is there to inform you. And so when it's something that feels bad, it's obviously the way that you're focusing on something or the way that you're believing something is just not what you want. It's not in alignment with you. So when you adjust that and learn that it's just guiding you and telling you that, and then you can refocus your mind on what you actually do want and really generating that from within, then everything changes, right? And you don't get stuck there, and you're not defining yourself as that, because a lot of people do that too. Like, because, and I'm guilty of it also, you feel something and then you're like, you make it mean all this stuff about who you are, and then you keep yourself little and you keep yourself low, right? So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So I think of emotions as like signal flares, where they're being shot off into the air, metaphorically speaking, so that I pay attention to what's going on in my world.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to hear from the male and female perspective, because men and women deal with emotions, I think, differently often. And so, yeah, I think that that's interesting, like the difference between, because I think women tend to be like flooded more with emotion, and like men are more direct and also like are trained like not to let themselves feel so much, or like, you know, like focus up here. And so I think it's, the difference is interesting. Yeah.
Your analogy of a wave was apt. It was very descriptive. And it's very hard to stop a wave once it begins to come at us.
Yes.
It could be any size wave. It could just be something lapping like a lake, or it could be a Pacific Ocean, or it could be a tsunami. Hopefully we're not trying to stop a tsunami type wave.
Right.
It comes up emotionally.
Sometimes you just can't when it's like.
And I would say that men are very good at compartmentalizing. Let's use that as a descriptive word for what we tend to do. And you said self-destruct or self-medicate, or turn to cigarettes, food as a compensation, or alcohol. Those are all things that men have a tendency to do, and I know women do too. But in my life, when I stopped self-medicating with more work, more exercise, more alcohol, more food, then I was able to reconnect the mind and the body, so that I didn't try to stop any size wave from coming at me.
Right. That makes total sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's beautiful. You can, I think that's like the beauty of creativity and how people work, because you can approach things from different angles and get to the same types of places. But yeah, but that works. Yeah.
I get a lot of criticism for my boundaries. I talk to my friends quite a bit. The topic of dating comes up quite a bit. Go figure, right? Because we're totally immersed and immersed in this fascination with modern relationships. But I get criticism for these boundaries, and you called it be Nazi with yourself. However, I think you were putting it in perspective of prioritizing yourself. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, and I say be Nazi because it's so hard when you're trained out of that to get yourself to do it. And so I use be Nazi just because at least I know for a lot of the women that I know and work with and myself that it's easy to just slip back into the old patterns. And so being Nazi just helps you to remember. And then once you get into the momentum of it, it gets easier. But when you slip in and out, sometimes you gotta like get on it that way. But yeah.
That's right. And I can tie that into the passion and purpose conversation that we were about to start, that when our priorities are focused on my pursuits, my purpose, and my passion, then you're absolutely correct that it becomes more attractive to the other people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can center yourself. Maybe that's not the right phrase. You can focus more on yourself in a healthy way, as opposed to taking it to the extremes that my friends think I'm putting boundaries on myself. But jujitsu is a non-negotiable for me. It does so much for my mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health that I would be no good for anybody else if I didn't do it.
Right. And the woman that will love you, and like in my mind, would be the one who knows that and wants you to feel expansive and life-giving, and knows that you'll be there in a better way, and so wants to support you in that. But I find in our society, like I'm a member of some of these Facebook groups just because I like to monitor what women are saying, what they're struggling with, and just sometimes give support. And some of the things that I read about, the way the expectations some women have, because these are women's groups that I'm part of, so I can't speak for the men, but these expectations of like, like he needs to be calling me this many times, and like if he doesn't do it this way or this way or this way, he's a piece of crap, like some stuff to me that sounds like, wow, like good luck, lady, if you're, but yeah. So I think it's more common than I realize. I know, because sometimes when you've done so much work and then you go back, you're like, whoa. But yeah. So I just lost my train of thought about that.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this. The commonalities that you're seeing in the women's group. I'm part of a men's group as well on Facebook.
Okay.
And each weekend I've been taking a social media detox so that I actually don't spend any time chemically. I'm receiving too much dopamine and serotonin and not enough oxytocin, but that's for a conversation for another time. What you were describing from that woman is that like he needs to call me a certain number of times.
Right,
and
yeah.
these expectations that are kind of wrapped up into modern dating.
Yes.
And I've just finished reading Amir Levine's Attached, which I love attachment theory. It's so amazing.
Yes.
And the fun fact that I learned about what you're describing is that the avoidant attachment style stays in the dating pool longer than any of the other attachment styles.
Mm.
And the reason being is because like, oh, he's great, but he doesn't text me enough. Oh, he's great, but he doesn't call me first every day. Or it's this statement of like, I really enjoy this person, but. So it's that caveat that the avoidant, which I relate to, the avoidant.
Yeah, I can relate to that too.
Right? It's this caveat that like, oh, I found a great person, but. And when I hear that language, I immediately refer back to what Amir Levine talks about of our tendencies to not define the relationship as quickly as we want as avoidance, or maybe not move in as quickly or on the right time frame of other people's expectations.
Right.
Does that resonate with you?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I feel like that shows up in women as like having this list of reasons like why he's not a good man, basically. Yeah. And
I love a good pros and cons list, but it can't be I like to avoid the word deal breakers because that's just not fair. It's not apt. Like,
well,
what's that?
Well, what I was thinking is like, if you're truly living for your own happiness and not to be selfish, but to be better for all the people in your life and all the people that you serve, like if you're truly doing that, then like it wouldn't really matter like if he called 2 hours late, or if like all that stuff is irrelevant, because he's not there to he's not there to make you happy in essence. I mean, yes, the goal is that you're both happy together. But I think like when you get caught up in the trap of that, that really, and it's it's hard not to, because we all want love, right? And so there's like this balance of connection and intimacy and having that experience, but then like remaining, you know, able to continue to feed that part of yourself and make that your priority, because that person will not be around forever. You know, like they could get hit by a bus tomorrow. They could, you know, like, not, God forbid, but like, you know, and all these number of things could happen where they're, you know, they're not there. They could cheat. They could, whatever. Lots of things can happen where, you know, and who do you have in the end? It's really your ability to generate that for yourself over and over and over again, no matter what life circumstance you actually find yourself in. So on a deeper level of what I like to give to the women that I work with is that ability to hold on and know yourself and love yourself and create that in your environment in such a strong degree that the rest of it's just flowing naturally. And of course that beautiful man's going to flow in and you're going to have, you know, lots of fun with that person, and maybe more than one person, you know, but whatever you desire, it can, like, I truly believe it can be yours. And for all the women, like, I hold that belief for them too, that I work with, like, whatever they desire, it's yours for the taking. It's just a matter of learning how to align with yourself enough to create it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
On a tangent.
That's all right. I love that. I love the organic conversation that just kind of winds throughout, because everything that I've learned so far over the last year, you know, Jessica Smith always says, this person comes into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And you touched on the permanence of relationships that our good friend Nick Mancini, a licensed marriage and family therapist, we spent an entire podcast episode on that topic, mm-hmm. of the permanence in relationships, and how if your self-love and self-care routine is making you happy, then your relationship improves because you're not relying on your partner to make you happy.
Exactly.
You can, if you're both putting in 100% effort into those few things right there, self-love for yourself, self-care, then you're both showing up happy so that you can be happy together.
Yeah. I'm a firm agreeer, believer in that. It's what I've learned for sure.
And then if we take these healthy boundaries that sometimes we can get Nazi about, and maybe we should, when we take these healthy boundaries, then we're able to create that life of abundance and life by design that we're all seeking with a partner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
So if there's one thing that maybe like I'm not touching on, or maybe I'm missing out of the conversation so far, or we haven't touched on yet, what would you like to leave us with today? One big aha.
I mean, I don't know if we haven't. I think we have touched on it, but I can re-emphasize just the idea that like you are unlimited in what you have the potential to create in your relationships, and like anything that you possibly could want to experience in this lifetime is there for you to have. And so whatever has happened in your life that makes you doubt or you know, it's all there guiding you always to that which you want. And your power to create is your power to live, and being able to do that is like the joy of life. So for me, yes, it's all about relationship, because we're human and we need to relate to each other, and that's part of our joy also. And to co-create takes it to the next level, right? When you have someone that you're creating with, that's like some next level amazingness. But to just own that power, you know, in whatever you're doing in your life, and especially in your relationships, to me, that's like the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been spending the last couple of weeks journaling a lot. You know, I came up against a roadblock, maybe one of those waves that hit me. It wasn't a tsunami, thank God. but it was small enough for me to, but yet large enough for me to pay attention to it for a short period of time. So I decided, let's take a short break from dating, because I think that would be the benefit for myself. And then also, I don't want to begin something new if I'm coming up against this roadblock at the same time. That's just not fair to the other person involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been spending time journaling morning and evening, and it's been phenomenal so far. And one of the other tools that I've used is, yes, yoga, in order to get closer to a meditative state that helps me tune in to that intuition that we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
And because of this roadblock, because of this metaphorical wave that came across me a few weeks ago, and I touched on it in our live event last week, I wasn't able to, during this meditation process, actually tune into that that source of information that you've been touching on, that power and that strength. And instead of getting frustrated by not accomplishing something as quickly as I want to, because that's me, I'm just like, all right, check it off the box, check it off the list and move on. I'm needing to spend more time with it. And that's a hard place for me to be in. What would you give advice to somebody who comes to you and is in a similar situation? They just can't get past this roadblock in order to flourish and create and find that love that they're looking for?
I would actually go with what you're like, if it was like the situation that you're describing, going with your own intuition, it sounds like, which was to take a break, and taking that even further, which is to actually really refocus, not on dating, put that on the shelf momentarily. And it's not that you don't desire it or you're not going to have it. It's just temporarily putting it on the shelf so that you can readjust your focus to the things, and also to get a sense of what, like in the emotion or in that block or whatever, that what might be being avoided. Like, so kind of getting a sense of that, but also just refocusing again on all the things that make you passionate. And so it would probably be a two-pronged approach in one sense, because I don't like to have someone focus on the things that don't feel good and that aren't working. So I would be trying to understand like what your actual thought process was around the whole situation, and then kind of breaking that down a bit, and then also, you know, refocusing energy where energy is flowing so that it can carry the other stuff with it naturally. And then it will just come to be at the right time, you know? So that's probably how I would work with someone on that.
Got it.
Yeah.
I understand that. I definitely do that. Like, in maybe my quick fix mentality or my magic pill mentality, that like, oh, I'll do yoga once and then I'll meditate for however long it takes afterwards, to come to that answer of tuning into my intuition.
Was it were you asking a specific question, or like, was it something really specific that you wanted clarity on, or was it something like I'm just curious, because that would make a difference in how you would approach it, at least from my perspective.
Sure. In my meditation practice, I like to just kind of drift with the thoughts. I'll ask a specific question at the beginning of what maybe I've journaled that morning or journaled the night before, of like, what am I grateful for? What lesson am I trying to learn from today? And I'll take it to that meditation process at the end of the day and ask that question, then just let it drift from there. And I wasn't drifting like I normally would. And instead of abandoning it and getting frustrated with it, I'll just come back to it at a later time. Continue to journal, and then catch back up to the routine of yoga to restore from jujitsu, but also yoga to enter into a calmer, more a welcoming space.
Yeah, I think I do this with my patients at the hospital too, because I think it's actually proven, like, when you get someone into their physicality, like out of their head into their body, then it's much easier for them after that to be able to connect to their heart and that part of themselves. So it's almost like a process that I see that over and over with myself and with patients that I work with, that, when they do something physical, when we pay attention to their physical bodies, through breathing, stretching, focus, then their ability to connect to that part of them is like much greater. So that makes total sense with doing yoga first. Like, I think that's right on from what I know. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's touch on your creative expertise just a little bit. What's a fun and kind of relationship building creative activity that a couple can do together? Maybe in the beginning or later on in their relationship when they're trying to reconnect?
So actually, it's interesting because I usually don't work with couples. I'm usually working with people who are, having trouble. But let me think for a second. I mean, I guess, so as a creative arts therapist, I often give interventions that are really tailored to the personalities and things. So I'm not sure. Something off the cuff that I could think of is it might be fun for them to do do body tracings of each other, or something along those lines. And then
Tell me more about what is body tracing?
so you would have like a large sheet of paper, lay them on the ground, and then the woman would then trace the outline of his body, and then he would get up and there'd be an outline on the ground, and then vice versa. And then maybe on the inside of that body, they could fill it up with images of, like, if they collaged or drew or words of things that they love about the other person. And then maybe on the outside, things that they'd like to bring to each other more of, or that they might feel isn't there yet that they both like to experience. Maybe do that on the outside, and then they could work with, the person. This is off the cuff, so but yeah, that's something that I think could be fun and like a bonding, cool, like, opening to help them get to know each other. And sometimes using art, one of the beautiful things about using art is, like, you don't always have to say things, and you can things are expressed just a little differently. Yeah, but if they're two high functioning people, you can probably have good conversations about what comes out of the artwork. Yeah.
That's a clever idea. I like that a lot. We did that as children, where we would trace each other's body on butcher paper. I haven't done that as an adult, but I do remember how close it brought us as children, whether it was a crayon or a marker or colored pencil or anything like that. And then you could really design whatever inside of your body shape that you want.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, before I let you go today, if your message resonates with our audience, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Okay, so you can the best way to directly reach me, and I like one-on-one contact. I like to get to know the people that I work with real well. So, and I'm kind of real present and supportive in my approach. I like the one-on-one contact, but you can email me at connect, CONNECT, at sarahrabenou.com. And then I also have a free online support group for women. And it's on Facebook, and it's the Create Lasting Love support group. It's called Create Lasting Love. So if you just do a search in Facebook for Create Lasting Love support group, you should find it there, and that's free to join. And I'm in there all the time supporting. And there's a beautiful community of women there who, if you're looking for that type of support, that's great too. That's another way to stay connected to me and my message, and I'm in there all the time. So
awesome. I'll put that information in the show notes and the blog post below. So if Sarah's message resonates with you guys today, please don't hesitate to reach out to her. Thank you again for your time. I know it's very valuable, so I won't take up much more of it.
It's been such a wonderful time talking to you. I've enjoyed it a lot. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. What do you say in the next 6 to 12 months we do a follow-up and we catch up and see where each other's at?
Sounds so good. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, David. Bye. Bye, everyone.